Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective.
The proper perspective.
So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective. Shabazz break it down with the proper perspective. Break it down with the proper perspective.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing? What's going on? How y'all doing? This is Shabazz with the proper perspective. Giving it a couple minutes to see, make sure everything is intact. Can you hear me? Mic check 1 2. Can you hear me? Mic check 1 2. What's going on? How okay, seems like everything is right where it's supposed to be. So we're gonna get started with the show today, this morning. Let me make sure everything is working the way it's supposed to be. So let's see. Let's see. Let me make sure everything is working the way it's supposed to be. So excuse the dead silence, ladies and gentlemen. While we wait for the show to get started, let me hit you with this. We're going back today, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get on an airplane, so to speak. Y'all hear that music? Y'all know where we're going. We're going back to the motherland this morning. Now, I hope I don't get snagged playing this beautiful African drum. But anyway, y'all can hear it. Y'all hear what's going on? Hopefully. We're getting a little bit more into our Pan-African vibe this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as I start the show, and we fade that music on out. Grand Rising, everybody. Grand Rising. Professor Shabazz is in the building. Grand Rising. Hujambo to everybody. Peace to all the positive black people in the universe. I should say it differently. Peace to all the positive people in the universe. You ain't got to just be black. What's good, Virginia? What's good, Richmond, Virginia? And hotep to the Pan-African black world. And if I haven't covered you yet, maybe this next hello will include you. All the real ones who see through the smoke and mirrors. What's going on? How y'all doing this morning? We are going to get this show started live and direct. Got to make sure all my tags are working, all my links are working. So what we're going to do is, before I say anything else, let me let you take a look at this. As they say in Ethiopia, when the spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. Get my positioning just right. When the spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. And that's exactly what we're seeing unfold right now when we start looking at some world news headlines. So let me tell y'all something. Now, as it relates to this little African proverb of mine. Not mine, I didn't author it. Y'all know that. But let me see if I can get this thing up on the screen again. So, as they say in Ethiopia, when the spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. Now, let me tell you something. These aren't just random spider webs. Nah, we ain't talking about no randomness right now. This is calculated, systematic coordination. Now, there's a buzzword for you if you caught my last live. Coordination between governments to move human beings around like chess pieces. Now, I don't know about y'all, but when I see patterns like this, my ancestors start waking up. My ancestors start whispering warnings in my ear, and I feel like I gotta listen. This is the same energy that shipped us across oceans 4 centuries ago, just with different, more modernized paperwork. Now, you might be asking yourself, what is he talking about? What is you on this time? Again, you got to pay attention to some headlines and some news outside of the contiguous 48. We are literally witnessing a historic controversy. Ghana's government has accepted migrants deported by the United States. Now, that part might be, or half of that might not be news, might not be new information. If you haven't paid attention, you know orangutan has been yanking people off the street. You know orangutan has been throwing people on airplanes and sending them wherever he so desires. This isn't your usual deportation story. Because now we got West Africans, Asians, we got Latin Americans, many of whom have zero ties whatsoever to any African country, not just Ghana, but to any African country. They being grabbed off the American streets, thrown on an American plane, and dropped off in various countries all across the continent. And there is fallout, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, there is fallout. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Lawsuits, public outrage, and a storm of grassroots debate that exposes these new policies. And they may start to remind us of some old colonial chess moves. All in this new modern day effort to reshape migration in 2025 and beyond. Now, if you're still with me so far, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, share this live with somebody you think may find interest, may find value, may find something to dispute from what I say. So as we move forward, let me see if I can pull this up. Because I know a lot of times people don't believe me when I start saying these things. So I'm like, okay, well, let me see if I can show you the headline. Let me see if I can show you the headline. I'll pull that up in a second. Here we go. Now, so if I show you this headline, then you will at least know I ain't making it up. So in this idea, in this news cycle, we got something going on in Ghana. The BBC is reporting that Ghana agrees to accept West Africans deported from the U.S. Now, that's West Africans, ladies and gentlemen. That's not Ghanaians. That's any West African. Ghana has become the latest country to accept people deported from the U.S. as part of orangutans' crackdown on illegal immigration. Now, this is the BBC, and maybe they are not fully aware. And I'm not saying that this is the most up-to-date news article, but I do take a little bit of let me take a moment, because although Orangutan started his campaign with illegal immigrants, let me get myself back to the big screen. Although he started his campaign with illegal immigrants, y'all know they done gone from illegal immigrants who are of bad character to illegal immigrants who are of good character to legal immigrants who are of bad character to legal immigrants who are of good character. And now they're going after birthright citizens. So this is not just about an illegal immigrant who snuck across the border. They sending people back who came the right way. Now that isn't necessarily swept up in the news article that I was showing, but the news article shows that Ghana is making deals and arrangements and agreements to try and receive whoever the U.S. throws on an airplane, even though they do it illegally. But so let's move closer. Let's dive deeper into this thing. And this reminds me, since I brought up my ancestors, and I do mean my ancestors, I mean my collective ancestors, and I mean those who appear in my own family tree, bloodline, lineage, since certain folk like to throw that word out there. There's an old Akon saying that says, the one who throws the stone forgets. But the one who is hit remembers forever. And this captures exactly what's happening with these deportation policies. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't show you. So like I said, the old Akon saying, the one who throws the stone forgets. The one who is hit remembers forever. Keep that in your mind. So how did we get here? That's the question. Well, if you already know, then what I'm about to say won't come as a surprise. But if you don't know, let me give it to you. Earlier this year, Orangutan doubled down on his promise to deport record numbers of human beings who've been making a living in this country. Shocking news, I know. Because he has even started deporting legal residents. Now, who would have thought such a racist man would do something like that? But let me continue. Let me slow down my little internet jabs. To complete this racist agenda, he is ramping up third country agreements with nations across Africa, and not just Africa. So don't nobody come at me like, why you picking on? I'm not picking on. I'm doing a news review. But he's doing this in as many countries as he can. I'm picking up on the one about Africa because that's our homeland. So he's making these third country backroom deals with Ghana, Rwanda, Eswatini, South Sudan. And I hear he may be in the works of making a deal with Uganda also. And so what's shocking observers is that many of those who are getting deported weren't West African. Many of those who are getting deported aren't even African at all. There literally are confirmed cases of people from Jamaica. Now, okay, correct me, or I stand corrected, because just as we over here as the African American community, in spite of what the pretending Tariq Nasheed, cult member FBAs say, just as we are African oriented, descended, and Africans in the West, so are Jamaicans. So I'm not using them in this list in some weird, in some anti kind of way. But people from Jamaica being thrown on planes. People from Vietnam are being thrown on these planes. People from Laos. Now, I usually mess that word up. Laos. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes some of the words just really mess with me. People from Cuba, people from the Philippines, and even Mexico are being thrown on these Trumpian deportation planes and sent to African countries. Now, excuse me if I make a little joke. I'd be like, I wouldn't mind getting a free plane trip. Why don't you pay for my plane ticket to go back to Africa? But of course, I'm joking. At least I don't want to be. I'm not trying to catch the deportation plane. But y'all feel free. Send me a Cash App or a GoFundMe or whatever else it might be. If you want me to hightail it on up out of here, I don't have a problem with that. I'm waiting on my ticket right now. But like I said, so all of these innocent people are being taken places against their will. Now, don't that sound familiar to you? Hold up. What did you just say? Let me break this down for people. If you're not quite up to speed, you're telling me they're taking Vietnamese folks and dropping them off in Ghana? That's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you. Cuban people are being landed and dropped off in Rwanda? Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. This is not immigration policy. This is human trafficking policy. And just like last time, it has a government stamp. They're literally playing pin the tail on the continent with people's lives. And guess which continent keeps getting chosen as the dumping ground? That's another reason why I'm saying this, talking this, and presenting this information. The same one they've been exploiting for 500 years, 400 years. Now, my question is, well, why do these countries accept them? Why do these governments, why did President Bahama accept these people? Why did, the president in Rwanda, and now his name escapes me, why did he agree? And so on and so forth. That's a good question. Well, let's talk about it. Let's deal with it. This is geopolitical chess. The U.S. offers aid. The U.S. offers trade sweeteners. Now, y'all know he going through every trade agreement and figuring out what's the best way he can violate it. And being the big bully that Uncle Sam is saying, okay, if you don't want me to violate our agreement, then I'm going to need you to do me another favor. I'm going to need you to do me a new favor. Enter this modern day human trafficking exchange called deportations. African governments are hoping that they can strengthen bilateral relations or that they can leverage deals on migration and security. And if you take a zoom back, okay, I can understand that. That might make a little sense. But for the people involved down here on the ground, the grassroots, this thing has been a political nightmare. This thing has been an existential nightmare. Shackled on flights, thrown into detention camps, and literally living in legal limbo. Y'all caught all those L's I threw out there? Literally living in legal limbo. Remind me of Kool Moe Dee when he dropped that joint against Cool J. But I digress. Now, deportees, lawyers, international rights groups, human rights groups, catch that, human rights groups, they don't mess around with civil rights when they know they got human rights that must be honored. They're all galvanizing and they're fighting back with lawsuits claiming illegal detention and violations of basic human rights. This is an international problem. Now, I got some links that I'm going to leave in the description so you can check this information out. But let's see. Maybe I'm gonna try to show some of them. That's one, just like I showed before. Okay, so, all right, so there we go with that one. Now, again, just to show you. So let me pull this thing on up and see if we can get it on the screen. Y'all know how we do. But what do you think about that? If you're in the chat room, if you're listening, if you're watching this on the replay, say something in the battlefield. Y'all know that's what I call my comment section. What do you think about people being picked up and just taken to places they ain't even got contact with? It would almost be something. If you from Vietnam, it would almost be understandable if they said we putting you on a plane and taking you back to Vietnam. If you from Brazil, they put you on a plane and send you back to Brazil, but that ain't what they doing. They deliberately trying to make a mess of things. Now, the question would be why, other than basic human trafficking. So you see the man in the middle of the picture, JD. Y'all know who I'm talking about. You see the Rwandan foreign minister speaking with the enemies of free speech and human rights who lead this current administration in the U.S. And so again, really, I'm just showing you this. I will leave the links to these articles below. But as I said, the government of Rwanda said on Tuesday that it had agreed to receive migrant detainees from the U.S. as part of the U.S. President Donald Trump's plan to send deportees to third countries. Rwandan government spokesperson Yolande Makalor confirmed that her country would take up to 250 deportees from the U.S., with the ability to approve each individual proposed for resettlement. Now, at least they were able to get to slide that into at least they were able to slide that slight loophole into the agreement. Now we'll have to wait and see as to whether or not they have enough mustard to hold to that. But still, it reeks of chaos. Now, as we move into this next section, and I tell you, it never fails. Every time I go live, I get people calling. Every time I go live, I get people calling. I'm going to have to shout at you later. I'm live right now. So I got text me or something. I'm literally live. And I know the people is like, so what? Text that. Gotcha. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I usually ignore the phone calls, but I got nieces around here, and for some reason I just I can't ignore my nieces when they call me. So excuse the interruptions. We now resume to our normally scheduled program. So as I said at the onset, this chaotic situation is going on with the orangutan administration is causing some sharp conversations down here in the grassroots. Now, before I bring up these arguments, I just want to remind people of a little piece of wisdom from our shared African heritage. The Yoruba people of Nigeria remind us that however far the stream flows, it never forgets its source. Now, this wisdom speaks directly to what is at the heart of this debate. Now, I hope you catch it. Because I'm gonna dive deep again. So as we zoom in, and we're gonna see how people are reacting. Let's see. Because it's a fierce debate within African and diaspora communities. and with good reason. But I'm going to keep it 100 with y'all. Watching African governments negotiate these deals, I would be remiss if I said it doesn't remind me of some historical things. Now, there's a saying, when you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And this might be part of the reason why these African governments are trying to make negotiations. They need to be at the table so that their whole country, so that their whole economy is not on the menu. And I get that. But some of these leaders think they're getting a seat at the big boys' table, and really, they're just being used as storage facilities for America's unwanted and discarded. So in essence, that's not altogether, that's not diplomacy, ladies and gentlemen. That's manipulation with a civilized handshake. But now that I've made that point, and shout out to people in the chat room, yes, indeed, we do love our heritage. Most of us. And I always give a shout out and credence to people that love their African heritage. I might start bombing on folks if the trolls show up. But let me get back to this thing now. So there are at least three main arguments that I've noticed in this conversation. So I'll give you these three arguments as positions. Position one comes from the critics. Now, the critics are outraged at Ghana's actions. And some of these voices say things like, this is a breach of justice. I don't disagree. They say Ghana had no right to detain or accept non-citizens with no legal connection, especially those still fighting their cases in U.S. courts. They say that accepting Trump's detainees sets a dangerous precedent and exposes Ghana to lawsuits for violating constitutional and international protocols. That's a strong argument. They also question the legitimacy of backdoor deals, and they accuse local politicians of political blunders that hurt the country's reputation and cost even more financial aid, even future financial aid, even different types of financial aid. Now, if you agree, let me know on the battlefield. Let me know if you agree with that position. And like I said, I do have links that I don't mind sharing. In the description. I'll put all of those links in there. So now we're going to move on to position number 2, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to move on to position number 2. Get this situated. Okay. So position number 2 is what I call the defenders. They emphasize sovereignty. They say Ghana is simply exercising its sovereign prerogative. If a nation accepts deportees, it's a government-to-government arrangement. There's no violation in this. Every deportee gets processed by authorities, and every deportee can challenge their detention in court. This is a legal procedure. They say, besides, accepting these migrants could strengthen international partnerships and show Ghana's commitment to humanitarian protocols, even if behind the scenes. And even if behind the scenes things look a little messy. Okay, and I will say, I haven't necessarily taken my own position on this. So I'm mulling over all of these points. And shout out to And shout out to Keela Shay in the chat room. Let's keep it live. Let's keep it active. So again, you got the critics and then you got the supporters. Now, if you are familiar with my channel, then you might say I would probably fall into the position of number 3, the pragmatist, but I ain't got there yet. But usually the proper perspective is where you try to find the strengths and the weaknesses of all arguments and try to create something right down the middle. Now, I ain't saying I do this all the time, because some things you're just going to have to pick a side and rock with it. But the pragmatists, ladies and gentlemen, they say they are concerned about logistics and the precedent that it sets. So pragmatists say, and then some walk, no, I'm saying that wrong. And so then the pragmatists, they walk this middle ground. They say, even if you disagree with the U.S. for making the deportations, even if you disagree with Ghana for receiving the deportees, that's all theoretical. In real life, real details matter. Now, the Ghana could say, nope, we don't want them. Trump just going to send them somewhere else. Trump not going to say, well, since Ghana said no, take them off the airplane and let them back under the U.S. streets. No, Orangutan has said, y'all going. We putting you on planes whether you like it or not. Now, again, that's the illegality of it. But the pragmatists point this out and they say, well, who's going to pay for housing? Who's going to pay for things after they arrive? What happens after they get off those planes? Are these deportees merely in transit through Ghana? They're going to land in Ghana, maybe shuffle around a little bit in the airport until the next airplane shows up and then off to their home country? Now, that's a good question. Or are these deportees going to be stuck in detention, perhaps indefinitely? Now, another question pragmatists like to ask, and for good reason, is Ghana really even equipped to handle this influx? Especially if people have no ties to Africa at all, especially at a time, at least for instance, in Ghana, there have been some recent troubling news domestically where Ghanaians are taken to the streets saying, we don't want no more foreigners here. So how does this all play into the mix? And this goes for all of the countries on the continent or otherwise. Because, for instance, in the South Sudan, they're dropping deportees. They're dropping human beings who have no connection whatsoever to Africa, who have no connection whatsoever to South Sudan. They're dropping them in a country like South Sudan, which is a new country, which is doing its best to stay on top of all of its own domestic affairs, and it's having a problem doing that. And anybody that try to come at me saying you talking negative, no. I give a shout out to South Sudan, and I hope everything works out with them. But I am still asking this question. So again, now the pragmatists point out that Jamaica, for instance, repatriated their citizen who was sent to Africa, raising even more questions about due process and sovereignty. I guess it would have been too much like right for Trump to send him directly to Jamaica. See, I think they're doing these things deliberately to stir up trouble, to create mess, to create havoc and chaos. But anyhow, let me not digress too much. And okay, good. So I sent that to the chat. Shout out to the chat again. Hit the like button. Share this stream with somebody you know is either interested, or share this stream with somebody you know that wants to debate, that wants to talk about me, that wants to play the contrarian and the devil's advocate. And as we move on, as we proceed, like they say in some of the old school hip hop songs. Let me again remind you of our African wisdom. The Zulu people have a saying. Now, I'm going to mess this up. I cannot speak Zulu in any way meaningfully, but I'm going to try to pronounce this. Izandla, Ziyagezana. Izandla, Ziyagezana. What it means is hands wash each other. Now, this speaks to the shared responsibility, and that's exactly what we need to be examining here with this airplane trafficking. Because at the heart of this whole debate, there's one razor-sharp question that remains. When migrants and asylum seekers are forcibly removed from the U.S. and deposited in countries where they have no connections, who really bears legal and moral responsibility? That's the question I want you to think about. Who really bears the legal and moral responsibility? Now, I'm going to sidetrack for a minute. Allow me to editorialize. I'm going to say what some people might be thinking. I'm going to say what some people might be thinking and are scared to say out loud or just don't want to say it out loud. Y'all know the elephant in the room type situation. This whole setup got plantation overseer energy written all over it, just on a global scale. You got the master's house. Y'all know Massa. Y'all know what Massa I'm talking about. You got the master's house, Washington, D.C., telling field supervisors, these representatives of the African governments, to handle the problem people. And when things go wrong, guess who gets blamed? Not the ones who created the mess, not Massa, but the ones left holding the bag. Now, perhaps they're naive, perhaps they're being duped. But we've seen this movie before. We've seen this narrative before. We've read this story before. Now, let me also ask, from what I have seen, now, if I'm wrong about this next statement, then please correct me. But from what I have seen, because I looked, you notice orangutan ain't making no deals with Burkina Faso or Mali or Niger. They ain't in this mess because they've been saying we done with the West. Those revolutionary black leaders is the ones in charge over there. Now, if something changes and I stand corrected, then hey, AK, I'm humble enough to say, whoops, my bad. Oh, there they go too. But as of now, they standing 10 toes down on what they should be doing. And shout out to the AES. Now, I'm done. I'm climbing back down off my soapbox. So let me just say this. Should legal action be focused solely on the governments that receive, detain, or process these deportees? Because this is really at the heart of the problem. I can understand anybody wanting to say, well, I'm going to sue you. You got me over here. I don't know nothing about this country. And you're holding me against my will. Yep, that's definitely lawsuit material. But who should bear the brunt? Because who sent you? So should legal action be solely focused on the governments that receive, detain, and process these deportees? Or do the architects of these mass removals in Washington deserve equal or even greater scrutiny? Now, to put it simply, is the primary accountability with the country that kicks people out? Often without due process. Often in violation of international law. Now, I'm posing that as an open-ended question. Now, if I wanted to pose it as a leading question, I would say, well, isn't the primary accountability with the country that kicks the people out? Isn't the primary accountability with the country that ignores due process? Isn't it the primary accountability of the country that works in violation of international law? Now, that's my leaning in question. That's my leading question. But again, in efforts and in attempts to stay even, because pragmatists will also say, oh, it's the real culpability with the receiving country, which chooses to detain and sometimes warehouse migrants with no ties to their land. Or, as many rights advocates insist, it's both governments. They're both complicit in an unlawful system that defies the principles of justice and human rights. And I think that's probably where most of us will land. Now, I have links again to these legal discussions. We'll see if I can pop these onto the screen. I'll give you just one example. So take a look at the screen, ladies and gentlemen. Staying in politics. Immigrants deported from U.S. to Ghana are sent home, where lawyers say some could face torture. Now, I give a shout out to the news reporting. I give a shout out to President Mahama. But these are serious allegations. The government of Ghana said Monday that 14 West Africans deported to the country from the U.S. have been sent to their home countries, places where lawyers representing some of the men say they face a risk of persecution or torture. Again, this is why I am questioning why these African governments would make these deals. On the outskirt, it sounds like Ghana is being humanitarian. On the outskirts, from the outside, it does look like Ghana is being humanitarian. But when you receive these folk who never should have been kicked out of the U.S. in the first place, and then they get to Ghana, I understand the idea of, okay, so you're from such and such, you're from such and such, you guys get in this line, you guys get in that line. I get it. I understand that. And then you start to send them back to their home source countries. But what happens if they were leaving those home source countries because they were already political refugees? They were already living under perilous circumstances. So this is like the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Is that what this is? So this is definitely something that we should be paying attention to. Now, I give a shout out, and my heart goes out to everybody involved on the quote unquote good side of this of this drama. Now, I mean on the good side of this drama. I will say that Ghana and other African countries that are receiving these detainees are trying to do the right thing. That's the good side of this human trafficking ordeal. I'm not giving a shout out to the left side of this argument, to the wrong side of this argument, to the Trumpians, the orangutans, who are setting this chaos into play. Now, again, a judge says, and again, all of these links will be in the comment section or in the description below. A judge says that the U.S. trying to do an end run, I told y'all it didn't make sense, around legal protections with deportations to Ghana. So a federal judge on Saturday accused the Trump administration of trying to do an end run. Y'all know end run means let's loophole this thing. Let's figure out a way to work around the rules, around legal obligations that the U.S. has to protect people fleeing persecution and torture following the deportation of a group of African migrants to Ghana, some of whom are now slated to be returned to their home countries. So if for instance, you came from the Congo, or you came from the Sudan, or if you came from Egypt, if you came from Morocco, and your status in your home African country had you at odds with some government or some warring faction. And that's why you came to the US and you came the right way and you had legal presence. And then Trump just throw you on a plane, and then Ghana's like, well, we'll take them because we don't want to see nothing bad happen to our African brethren. But then in the mix-up and in the chaos, Ghana end up sending you right back to the warring factions. It's going to be some problems. Earlier this month, the U.S. deported more than a dozen non-Ghanaian nationals to Ghana, including deportees from Gambia and Nigeria, making Ghana the latest country to accept these so-called third country deportations at the request of the Trump administration. So again, I'm showing you these receipts, A, to let you know I'm not making this up. I get a lot of trolls that say, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, then, at least you can see I'm reading off the news sources. Now, you ain't no need of trying to battle me. Ain't no need of trying to debate me. You can debate the news sources. But again, I'm just giving you an overview of this situation. Now, part 3 of our discussion today is what I call the legal and the historical context. And y'all know what I'm going to do. Every time I open up a section, I'm going to at least try to show you. Okay. Let me see if I can get this on the screen. I don't know what happened, but it did get a little mixed up. So let me fix this, and then I'm going to show you to you. So as we enter this section 3, what did I want to show you guys? Here we go. Go back. Y'all can see it there. The Igbo people, our heritage intact. The Igbo people teach us that when the roots of a tree begin to decay, it spreads death to the other branches. Now, why am I saying this? Why am I utilizing this? What purpose does this serve? Well, this little piece of wisdom, this jewel, if you might, perfectly captures what happens when legal frameworks are violated. The root of the tree begins to decay, and it's going to spread, and it's going to touch and impact and hurt and harm all the branches. Yeah. So let's dig deeper. Because, yeah, I'm going to go there. Ghana's constitution, the protocols of the ECOWAS community organization, they have protocols on free movement. And there is something called the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. All of these instruments, all of these legal documents, these are not historical artifacts. These are living and breathing documents that are supposed to have meaning. They all guarantee freedom from arbitrary detention. They all guarantee access to the right to fair process and protection against unlawful transfer or unlawful deportation. International bodies, including the UN, including Human Rights Watch, have blasted these third country dumping practices. They see that all of this human trafficking echoes of colonial era schemes designed to move what the West calls undesirables not only outside of the Western territories. And I will grant anyone, if anyone says, well, that's what they should be doing, even though I disagree, I will grant you a little grace and say, okay, maybe. But if you're going to remove people from this area, you have a responsibility to put them into areas that are safe. When you move them far from their community, without regard to justice or safety, you are a problem. Now, that's my calm, casual disposition opinion on the topic. Allow me to climb back up on that soapbox again. And let me say it this way. Echoes. Nah, bro. This ain't no echoes. This is the same system with a 21st century makeover. They took off the colonial uniforms and put on business suits. They switched out the slave ships for cargo planes. But the mentality is identical. Let's move these black and brown bodies somewhere else where they won't bother us, since they are no use to us anymore. The technology changed, but the racist white supremacist mindset, the racist white supremacist or ideal stayed exactly the same. Now I'm going to climb back off of my soapbox. And I'm going to move into the next section of our conversation. Because Ubuntu philosophy teaches us a very fundamental truth. I am because we are. We are because I am. This interconnectedness is why what's happening matters to all of us, or should matter to all of us. This story isn't just about laws or international politics. This story is a wake-up call for Black people across the globe. For many Black Americans and for Pan-Africanists, the rising tide of deportations under this administration and the ripple effects, not only in Africa, but all of this delivers a chilling message as far as I'm concerned. Because none of us is truly safe from overreach, from government overreach. The long arms of the law. Some in our communities have even decided to leave the U.S., and I get it. Soon as they found out that orangutan won the election, whether he won it fairly and squarely or not, whether he won it legally or not. And yes, we can go down the rabbit hole of what Elon Musk did and said and bragged about doing. But even if we had all of the evidence dead to rights, the system doesn't care. The system is still going to say orangutan is in charge. So I get it why. I understand why lots of people said, I'm getting my passport, I'm getting my visa, and I'm hightailing it out of there. Before they can throw me on a deportation plane, I'd rather go first class on Delta. So yes, many of us have left the contiguous 48, seeking safer havens, dreaming of a free life, either back on the continent or somewhere else abroad. And here's the cruel irony that gets me so heated, or here's the cruel irony of it all. Our people are trying to escape the American killing fields, the racism, the white supremacy of the contiguous 48, by going to the motherland, for example. And now the motherland, for example, is making deals with these international racist, white supremacist criminals. It's like trying to escape a burning building just to find out The fire department is working with the arsonists. And y'all know that happened in Tulsa. Eventually, we're going to have to get to the point where we realize we can't always run. Now, I am not taking shots, but we can't run from this fight forever because it's going to follow us everywhere we go. But I am not taking shots. Trust and believe. I know whether you go or stay, you're going to have to face this one day. Now, you see, under policies like these, let me reiterate this question. Under policies like these, does an exodus actually guarantee safety? No. It doesn't. You cannot guarantee safety because you leave this country, especially the way this country is operating now. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't be leaving. And I'm not talking down on anyone who does leave. Hell, trust and believe. If I give you full disclosure, I'm still looking at available spaces for myself. I'm still investigating Ghana and Egypt and Rwanda and Kenya and Senegal and Liberia and Sierra Leone. I fully intend to leave myself, so I'm not against leaving. And I'm not talking down on anyone who does leave. I had a couple brothers come into my chat the last time I was live and said, well, as far as I'm concerned, if you leave, you're a coward. Okay, well, tell that to all of the people who left on the Underground Railroad. Just because we had an exodus movement in the past doesn't mean we won't need one in the present or the future. But let me ask you this. What if the countries that many of us visit, migrate to, hold visas in, what if they start replicating this same harshness, detaining, deporting, refusing without legal protections? This is more than a headline, ladies and gentlemen. This is an urgent reminder that the fight for dignity and rights, especially when you're Black, the fight for Black dignity, Black rights, safe mobility spans borders. It is a call to solidarity. I'm always talking about solidarity. I'm a Pan-Africanist. It's part of who I am. It's how I'm built. But we need to be watching global policies just as closely as we watch these domestic American policies. We need to demand transparency and build support networks grounded in justice and respect wherever we live, wherever we travel. In a world where borders tighten in the blink of an eye, freedoms shrink in the blink of an eye, staying informed and united is our strongest shield. That's my piece. That's my comment. That's my commentary. Now, before I close out, I'm going to hit you with at least one more piece of wisdom. Talking doesn't cook rice. And why do you say that? Because we need action, ladies and gentlemen. My people, my family, my brothers and sisters, we need action, not just words. Now, I'm here providing all kinds of words. But I'm also looking to take some action. Here's the big question. Now, is this just Western powers using their clout for modern-day migration chess with African governments and other governments making difficult choices under pressure? This is very much a real interpretation and observation and assessment of the situation. But is it also a violation of fundamental rights? Is it also, therefore, destined to backfire as legal and moral outrage grows? These lawsuits are not isolatory. There are class action lawsuits, and they are being filed in the U.S., they're being filed in Ghana, they're being filed at the UN, they're being filed in the International Court. So something's coming, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if you're picking up what I'm putting down, if you feel what I'm saying, Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your experiences. I would love for us to push this conversation beyond the headlines. Now, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, if you don't like what I'm saying, let's duke it out in the comments. Let's duke it out on the battlefield. Because that's what I call my comment section. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, this is your brother Shabazz. This has been The Proper Perspective. So as I greeted you this morning with Grand Rising, I will begin to depart from you now with Ujambo. Peace to all the positive people in the universe. What's good, Richmond, Virginia? Hotep to the Pan-African black world and all the real ones who see through the smoke and mirrors.
Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective.
The proper perspective.
So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. So much controversy and a lot of deception. You don't know who's coming through with the light and reflection, and whose mouth is mumbling, trick knowledge deceptive. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. Shabazz, break it down with the proper perspective. Break it down with the proper perspective.